This is a little bit of a surprise. I got an email from Venerable this morning saying, would you do the BBC and share your impressions from last night? I said, sure. And then I started working on it and went, oh my God, really? There's so much. So last night, I, along with, I think there were 11 other monastics, plus a handful of other people from the Abbey, guests at the Abbey, attended a meeting at Newport High School. It was officially the Washington State Department of Ecology is holding a 30-day public comment period for the PacWest silicon smelter that is proposed to be built in our town of Newport, 12 miles up the road. Part of their State Environmental Policy Act process. And so it was a meeting to do what they call scoping in the process to find out, kind of like a public hearing, to find out what the people who will be affected want to have included in the Department of Ecology's assessment of the environmental impact of this proposal. So someone said there were 800 people there last night. I don't think there were. I think it was more like 500. I personally counted the side of the room I wasn't on. And there were like 200 over there, and there were more on our side, so I'd say about 500. But the population of Newport proper is 2,118. 500 people is a lot of people. Our whole county population is 13,000. 500 people showed up. People spoke in 2-minute increments. I commended the facilitator highly for her compassion and her firmness and her just clarity in holding that 2-minute limit for people. So I don't really know how many people spoke. Do you have any clue? Dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens.
80.
About 80? Yeah, okay, 80 people. Of those, 2 spoke in favor of the smelter. Nobody else. The rest all had different views. And they came from, all different backgrounds. So I wanted to do a little bit of a background because not everybody in this room knows really what we're talking about. But a couple of years ago, a Canadian company, then called High Test Sands, now called PacWest, or a subsidiary of High Test Sands, or we don't know what the relationship is, but they have a new name. They announced a plan to build a $325 million 40-acre silicon smelter in eastern Washington. So a few sites got picked. I mean, they moved around. It ended up being in our town of Newport, purchasing 192 acres for the project. So it's grown. Silicon is made from quartz rocks, and then it's heated at incredibly high temperatures using coal, or I found out last night, charcoal is an alternative, and wood chips, burned to melt at like over 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit to melt this down into a metal that's then used in computers, hence Silicon Valley, and also they're talking about making solar panels from it. It's a smelter. Smelters melt rocks and turn them into metal, and in the process, they use huge amounts of fuel and affect the environment. So this particular one, the boundary is less than a quarter of a mile from residential properties, from schools, from churches, from the grocery store, for goodness sake. So it's of great concern to our community. The arguments they used against it last night were many. They talked about air pollution, obviously. They talked about water pollution. They talked about sound pollution. They talked about excessive water use. They talked about the health danger for vulnerable populations. They talked about the health threats for healthy people, long-term chronic health deterioration for everyone else, environmental degradation of all types. All of these things came up. The things that, I didn't take notes. I wasn't planning to speak about this or even write about it. Mostly I wanted to feel it out. And I will say I was very heartened to have been there last night. The people who spoke again and again and again, were speaking so passionately from their heart, not just from their own personal interests. I mean, many people said, my family's been here for 5 generations, 4 generations. I want my children to be able to live also in this beautiful environment. Many people said this doesn't just affect Eastern Washington. This affects Idaho, which is our neighbor like 4 miles away, I think, at that point, which is not included in the process. It'll also blow into Montana and British Columbia. Concern for the larger use, I mean, the larger effect throughout our region. People spoke about the impact on the water that goes into the Pend Oreille River, that flows into the Columbia River, that wins its way throughout the entire state of Washington and eventually ends up going out into the Pacific. What's the environmental effect of poisoning this water, poisoning the fish who live there, spreading that downstream, 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 downstream into the crops, into the land, into the soil, into the fish, into the ocean? We don't know. Talking about, even, I was very happy, really, that there were so many of us there, and also that we had our interfaith cheering section there with the 2 nuns the 2 Carmelite nuns who are our friends, both Sister Leslie, who's on the front, her photo's on the front page of the Bonner County Daily Bee today, and Sister Nancy spoke. Sister Nancy addressing something that hadn't come up before, but even the light pollution, and what it is to have this factory going, or this industrial process going day and night, day and night, day and night, with the lights that go with it, and, you know, with the capacity to, how it affects the migration. She didn't mention this, but how it affects the migration patterns of birds, the animals, and people. You know, and my own concern, what does the sound of that manufacturing do to the minds of elementary school children who are within earshot all day long? What is it actually doing to their brains? I don't know. We don't know. The thing that I was heartened by, however, was as I started to say, was this big picture view of the long-term effect of having this smelter in our community and its effect on a wide-ranging levels. It made me feel that there was a possibility that that kind of global thinking, that awareness of the interdependence of things, has a possibility to make this not happen. It has a possibility. We don't know. I mean, there are other forces at work as well. But from the Buddhist perspective, I was thinking, so what makes this a part of our practice? Why is it our practice for a bunch of, Buddhists, especially Buddhist monastics, to go sit in a gym sitting on bleachers? I haven't sat on bleachers since Susan's son graduated from high school. But there we were on these bleachers in this community with all of these people together, feeling our interrelationship. I don't know their names. People who've been more involved in the community than I am do. But we've had our friends from the post office. We have our connections at the hardware store. We have our connections at the vet. We have all the people with whom we share this life, who are not Buddhist, have not come up here, will never be. And yet we are totally, totally interdependent on how we live and how we do our work and how we live our lives together. So bringing that awareness again and again and again and again to the social projects that we get engaged with, I think is a really very, very important part of our Buddhist practice. Venerable Tridren, of course, has written about this and spoken about this many, many times, and about our compassion needing to come off the cushion and into our actions to being of benefit to others. But a person I really wanted to take a look at to see, what they've spoken out about in terms of Buddhists taking action is Bhikkhu Bodhi, who's a Theravadan monk who's been very active and sometimes a little bit apologetically, but saying, I may be a Buddhist monk, but it is essential, it is imperative that people who understand interdependence and care about other living beings do what we can to stop harm. Do what we can to stop harm. And he says there are certain convictions that we as Buddhists hold and consider inviolable. We believe, for instance, that every human being possesses intrinsic dignity, that everyone should be treated fairly, that those fallen into hardship should be protected and given the chance to flourish, and that the resources of the earth should be used judiciously out of respect for the delicate web of nature. All of those things are true and are a part of what we bring into our meditation practice. He says we're entering a turbulent time, we are in a turbulent time, when it's not enough to merely adopt the Dharma as a regimen of resilience, as a means of maintaining inner balance against the shock waves rippling across the landscape. In other words, not just for ourselves. We need to be inspired by a radically different vision of human interconnection, one that affirms our duty to respect and care for one another and to maintain a habitable planet for generations yet unborn. And so I was very proud last night that Shravasti Abbey was present, engaged in our community. I was proud of our community. One woman at the end stood up and she said, she was quite passionate. Whoa, she was fiery. Yeah, she was on fire. And I think she was the one who said, just because we are a small town, we are not stupid people. And honey, I'll tell you, there were no stupid people talking last night. Whether people were speaking personally, they were talking about, I'm the sole provider for my family. I have a wife and 6 daughters. Sole provider of my family. I grew up with my grandparents' property destroyed by a smelter. I know what's coming. I'm trying to sell my property and get out of here for the sake of my family, and already my property is of no value because people know this is coming. Wow, yeah. From that kind of, impassioned thing to scientists and engineers standing up and saying things I can't even quote. This is what happens to the air, this is what happens to the land, this is what happens around the people. People bringing their skills together, bringing their different circumstances together, everybody bringing a little piece of the case for how to benefit ourselves as a community and how to benefit the much larger region and even how to benefit the planet. It took everybody's thought, everybody's wish that created this, I think, brilliant tapestry of how to stop this. So I was very proud that the Buddhists were present and also had something to contribute. I was also thinking, I was talking with Venerable Sangye Kadru about this yesterday, who also brought to mind, what happens if it happens anyway? How do we work with it? And we also have the quote, which she brought to mind, from Shantideva, the guideline. If we can do something about things, why be upset? Just do it. If we can't do something about it, why be upset? We can't do anything about it. We work with our minds and carry on. That's my part, not his. He doesn't have that part in the quote. But right now, we're in the phase where we can do something. So we don't need to be upset about it. We don't need to get all torn up and stressed out and We can continue to do our practice. We continue to reach out to others. We can continue to invite other people into the conversation. And we simply do what we can with conviction, and I would say with a lot of hope, with a lot of conviction in the possibility of creating good causes that bring about good results, and doing it with that kind of mind. I think it will help us stay stable and calm as we do what we need to do, contribute to the extent that we can. And in the meantime, we're going to meet a lot of people and connect with a lot of people and have very good connections with them. And that will be of benefit too. So, the process continues, and I invite everybody here to find out more and see what we can do.
Yeah, so we've been writing a lot of letters to our county commissioners and to the man in charge of the developmental planning of the area, because we think that they may be trying to rezone the property soon to make it okay for the smelter to be there. So we really need people to flood their offices with emails opposing the smelter. So if you would like to write an email, please contact us at office.shrivasti@gmail.com, and Venerable Samten will send you, we have talking points, and she'll send you the email addresses of the people to send your letter to. And we would really appreciate this.
There's also on our website, there's an article that was posted, I'll move it back to the homepage, that was posted a month or two ago that has some of the talking points already in print that's available right there, and it also has the addresses, I believe, of the. Okay, then we'll add it. Okay, so there we'll also have that information on the homepage of our website so people can access it easily.
I also agree with your point of being hopeful. And when we don't know what's going to happen, what we do know is that everyone being involved like this holds people to making this better. The process and whatever comes out of it, even if they build it, they're going to have to know that people are watching and that they're going to have to do things in a way that is safer and better all the way around. So it's a win situation to be involved at this point, no matter what happens.
As far as in our purification practice, I'm quite sure that this is directly related to harsh speech, right? Inhospitable environments manifesting. So we can all definitely do a little bit by purifying harsh speech so that hopefully inhospitable environments don't manifest in our area.
The benefit that I've experienced over and over again, as well as Venerable Tarpan, Venerable Semke, and the others who've gone to meetings over the last 13 months, is that people will come up to us and thank us just for showing up. And so the conversation starts with, our community friends. And it's a very great building opportunity, sadly, that it's happening this way, but it is very positive.
I wanted to add that one of the Newport City Council women spoke early on. And she had made a comment that was almost a little plea. But she said, I'm happy that everyone came here. She said, I hope that we can keep talking to each other. Not a lot of thumbs went up, but mine did. I think this is also something that we can bring just from our background and our orientation of wanting to, to not recognize the opposition as the enemy, to help the conversations happen in our community, again, no matter what happens, so that it doesn't end up dividing people, but that the process continues, even when those people have different views from ours, that we stay in relationship with them and really listen to each other.